Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar. We have gathered here to have a discussion or a presentation around South Africa's water and energy crisis. We've been through this for a number of years now, and I'm aware that some of you might be affected by load shedding, and we'll try to have this presentation or this webinar loaded on Parliament's YouTube channel should you miss part of it. And in this meeting, we have 4 speakers, and the main one will be a presentation by Tomani, and that will be followed by input from Jenny, as well as from Gabriel. And before we go to those main presentations, we have among us Esther, who's the representing the leader of this division that is hosting the webinar. And before much waste of time, because things might be a little bit tight in terms of time, we'll hand over to Esther to make opening remarks.
Thank you, Joseph, and good morning, colleagues, all participants. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence here this morning, taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. As Joseph just indicated, we would have liked our division manager, as the custodian of the knowledge management strategy of Parliament, to do the opening and welcome for us. But Dr. Gabriel is on a much-deserved break this morning, or for the past couple of days, so we will keep the show on the road in his absence. I just want to make a couple of comments by way of background to the webinar of today. So I'm going to share my screen if you will allow me. There we go. So colleagues, basically this webinar today constitutes the Parliamentary Research Unit's second webinar in the series on South Africa's transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient and sustainable economy and society in a manner that is fair, equitable and transparent, commonly referred to as the just transition. The main purpose of the webinar series is to share knowledge and develop capacity to enable Parliament to conduct deeper scrutiny for deeper insight. And this is in line with the strategic direction of the sixth Parliament, as well as the knowledge management strategy of Parliament. So the ultimate aim is really to facilitate effective oversight by Parliament over this just transition process. And as I mentioned already, Dr. Gabriel is the custodian of the knowledge management strategy of Parliament, but he's not able to be with us here today. Just a little bit about the knowledge management strategy of Parliament then. So basically, the knowledge management strategy of Parliament acknowledges that Parliament is an information-driven and an information-reliant organization. And then knowledge must therefore be managed in such a way that it ensures that information required for the business activities of the institution is current, is relevant, and is readily accessible to empower members of Parliament then to make informed decisions. So therefore, as was also mentioned by Dr. Gabriel in the first webinar that we had in this series, that the purpose of this webinar series is really to capacitate the parliamentary populace in general, but then also members of Parliament in particular through various platforms such as these webinars, so that they can make informed decisions. The strategy also aims to ensure that we build a culture of continuous learning and innovation, and that we find a way to really preserve institutional memory by recording and documenting the findings and recommendations emanating from these webinars. So basically, in a nutshell, without going through formally what the acknowledgement strategy all entails, is really to say that our task as knowledge workers in Parliament is to continuously develop information, document that information, and to share our skills and expertise with our political principals so that we can capacitate them and also ensure that we preserve institutional memory for our future generations. So I think, I alluded to the fact that this is the second seminar in the series of seminars on the just transition. The first webinar in the series was really done under the theme, "Is the just transition a pipe dream in light of slow economic growth?" And during that webinar, some of the participants here might have also participated in that first webinar. We explored topics such as the dimensions of a just transition, the future of work, the impact of the just transition on social justice, and the impact of air pollution on public health. And that webinar actually revealed that a just transition may just be a pipe dream in light of slow economic growth in South Africa. It also underscored the importance of capacity building for members of Parliament to help them understand all the different dimensions, because this phenomenon of the just transition has got multiple dimensions to it. And so in order for Parliament to really engage with the issue, we need to understand what all those dimensions are. We need to understand how all the different sectors are involved in it and how interrelated they are, so that we can also do coordinated and integrated oversight, lawmaking, or whatever else functions of Parliament that pertains to the processing of the just transition. But ultimately, we want to oversee that this process happen in a manner that is fair and that is just, because members of Parliament are representatives of the people that will be mostly affected by the just transition. So without going into too much about what happened in the first seminar, most of the presentations that were delivered during that webinar, as well as the reports that came out subsequent to the webinar, have been loaded onto Parliament's website. So if you want to get some more information on that first webinar, you can just go to the website. I'm sure Joseph, as the facilitator at the end of this webinar, will be able to tell you exactly where to locate those presentations and reports. So that brings us to the webinar of today, and today's webinar. So as I was saying, during the first webinar also, we were saying that that is the start. We're starting with our thought leaders in the different sectors, but that is only where we're starting. We want to drill all the way down eventually to the actual people, the people that Parliament represents, and the people that will be mostly affected by the just transition. And so today, and I think today's theme is quite in line with the President's announcement about a week or two ago, where he said that we're going to have to start working with our neighbors in Africa regarding our energy crisis to find solutions. And so, I think the webinar of today is aptly titled "Water and Energy Crisis in South Africa. Could the Lesotho Mountains provide a solution?" So the water and energy crisis, the focus of the webinar really is our current water crisis, our current energy crisis, but more specifically, what is the role that Parliament should and could be playing in really mitigating these crises that we're facing at the moment. And I think we justified, colleagues, in calling it a crisis if we consider the fact that as recently as July, in terms of the energy sector, we went up to lockdown level. I'm saying lockdown level. The power outages, load shedding level 6, which meant power outages of up to 7 or 8 hours a day, became quite untenable. And usually it happened in the morning when everyone had to get ready for work, or in the evening when, it's down one time for homework, time for cooking, time for really preparing for the following day of school and work. I will also just recount in terms of water. I mean, we've read recently that our neighbors in Gqeberha nearly reached level 0 in terms of water, and so water rationing has become the norm for us. I was mortified about a couple of months ago. It could have been late last year or early this year, at a news insert where an old grandma from Westbury in Gauteng was saying, please, can you tell the government if we have load shedding, I cannot breathe, because she's coupled to a machine that she cannot operate if there's no electricity for her to do it with. And so those are the realities, our people's realities on the ground that Parliament is supposed to be representing. And so I think it is really apt that at this point, Parliament starts asking itself, what is it that we should be doing or could be doing to also mitigate these challenges? So today's webinar is going to take the form of a presentation and then responses by 2 respondents. So the main presentation then will be delivered by Mr. Tomani Manungofala, and his presentation is really around the theme of today. So looking to the Lesotho Mountains for a possible solution to our water and energy crises. So yeah, he will be exploring the potential of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project in particular to solve the water and energy crisis in South Africa. This then will be followed, as I said, by an input from a water expert. It's our own in-house expert, Ms. Jeannie Leroux. And Jeannie will be looking at what role Parliament could be playing in mitigating the water crisis specifically in the country. After that, we have one of our own, or someone who used to be one of our own. Gabriel is an energy expert, scientist who left Parliament, I think, at the end of February as a career development move. Gabriel will be responding to us, to Tomani's presentation regarding the role that Parliament can play in mitigating the energy crisis in the country. So colleagues, I really just invite you now to sit back and enjoy what promises to be some insightful presentations. We look forward also to fruitfully engage with you during the question and answer session with the presenters. So I'm hoping that you are able, we're going to try to stay within time, hoping that you are able to engage with us during that session. And once again, thank you very, very much for joining us here today. Thank you, Joseph.
All right. Thank you very much, Esther, for the opening remarks. You can remove your presentation.
I would like to do that, Joseph.
Oh, stop sharing.
Yeah. Did I do that?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are now moving to the next part of the presentation, where Tomani will lead us into the main presentation for the day. We're trying to rush a little bit, and apologies to those ones that came a bit later. My name is Nhlanhla Joseph Kinenza. I am a mini chair of this session, and as Esther has said, we are going to have two other members that will be making input, and we'll be exploring a few questions whether around this water and energy nexus, whether is there a solution, and do we find, is there a possibility of regional geopolitics having a direct impact in this water and energy situation that we find ourselves in? And then it will be the question around, is there an end to the situation that we are currently in? And is there a possibility of a just and equitable transition to a low carbon, climate resilient and sustainable economy and society? Like some were saying already, that South Africa is trying to colonize Lesotho over its waters. But these are some of the issues that we'll be getting some information on, and wrapping them, the input, it will be on Parliament's role in moving the country towards mitigation of these crises, the water and energy crisis that we currently have. Tomani, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Greetings to our audience online. Firstly, I would like to thank you for making time on a Friday morning towards a long weekend. I know some of you have booked to be far away enjoying themselves over the long weekend, but anyway, you chose to be with us here, and I hope it's going to be worthwhile. Let me try to upload my presentation. Let's see. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Just let me know, Joseph, if you can see everything. It's fine on your side.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That is the title that you see there. What I'm going to do is going to be snappy. I'm going to talk to this topic, looking at the potential that lies in the mountains of Lesotho, particularly looking at the Lesotho Highlands project. But obviously here we are focusing on the mountain itself, without really going into the Lesotho project and all of that. But obviously we are going to relate or refer to it as we go. Without any further ado, let me get down to it. I think it's important that before we deal with the issues, we provide a context as to what we mean by crisis. And I think this is very important that we are on the same page as we move forward, because oftentimes people get into discussions without really understanding each other, the meaning of the words and so on, and following along, and only to find that, no, actually these people are not talking about perhaps what you were thinking. All right. When we talk about crisis, I think the Oxford puts it as a time of intense difficulty or danger, and the Merriam-Webster puts it as a situation that has reached a critical phase. And you can agree with me that the water and energy issues have reached a critical phase, and they've put us really in a difficult time and danger. If you know what the consequences are for load shedding and also issues of water scarcity. And to take it further, insofar as meaning is concerned, the World Economic Forum defines water crisis as a significant decline in the available quality and quantity of fresh water, resulting in harmful effects on human health or economy. And this is the same definition that is also used for energy crisis. So in other words, it's a significant decline in the available amount of energy, as well as that affects human health and economic activities. And all these things, you can tell that the energy crisis in South Africa has been affecting us in these ways, or even more, because I'm not quite sure, but in my search, I couldn't find a direct link to some of the fatalities in the country that as a result of perhaps maybe energy load shedding and so on. But I think it's something that researchers should explore to find out exactly the impact of load shedding on human health or the economy in general. I've put down some of the issues as examples of a situation that indicates that really the crisis has reached a critical phase. When we start rationing water, when we start talking about day zero, and when the load shedding or blackout, it's order of the day, then you know that the crisis has reached a crisis. But we know that South Africa is a water scarce country. So, but where now the scarcity is not managed properly, then we tend to have a problem. And the ultimate consequence, or the ultimate end of the water crisis and energy crisis. It's issues like day zero, where the water supply systems are not able to provide enough water. So in other words, you cannot abstract any more water in the system. And insofar as electricity is concerned, then there's no electricity at all. So that is what we call blackout. Now that we understand the meaning of this concept, let us now deal with the issues of the causes around the issues of this crisis that we find ourselves in. The most important one, I think, Esther, when she opened, she indicated that President had tabled, I think, a response to the crisis 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And then that was followed by the crisis ministers crisis committee, energy crisis committee, which I think it was on Tuesday or Monday, where they were also providing specifics insofar as crisis is concerned, how they are going to mitigate it going forward. But be that as it may, I would like just us to focus on 2 or 3 causes of the crisis that we find ourselves in. Insofar as energy is concerned, the problem that we find ourselves in, it's much more to do with a regulation challenges, where you find that now ESCOM, it's a monopoly. And you know, in monopoly, the issues can go very wrong, or sometimes, but there are disadvantages and advantages in a space of monopoly competition. So that resulted in lack of competition in ESCOM, and usually you would find that insofar as generation is concerned, by law in South Africa, no one can generate, transmit or distribute energy without other than ESCOM up to a recent time. And there are talks that obviously they want to amend the Electricity Regulation Act just to provide for the IPPs and so on. But still, no one can use coal or nuclear to generate energy. So that is one thing that I think exacerbated the energy crisis in South Africa. It's because of the legislation. And to compound matters, the issues around corruption, fraud, theft, mismanagement, vandalism of public infrastructure. Those are some of the issues that now we find ourselves in this situation with respect to both water and energy. Projects now are delayed well beyond their completion dates. To give you just examples, look at Midupe, look at Kusile power stations. Look at the water project in Guyana, look at the LESOTHO Islands water project. All these projects are delayed. So if these delays were not there, we would have not been in this situation today as we speak. So, but just because people have squandered the resources, mismanagement and all of that, then obviously we find ourselves, because some of these projects were supposed to have been online by now, but they are not. So those are some of the issues that are compounding the crisis insofar as water and energy is concerned. And the issues of geopolitics is also contributing. If you look at the Russia-Ukraine issue, the issues in northern Mozambique, Cape Delgado, you can tell that those are issues that are affecting directly the energy supply value chain. So those are some of the things that I think are compounding the issues. But because I think these were discussed at length by the president and many other commentators in the space of water and energy, I'm not going to dwell too much on this. For me, as a person, my nature is that I'm much more interested in solutions. So to talk too much about problems, it doesn't thrill me. So, but let's move on now to the crux of the matter. Okay, now let's look at the situation insofar as water and energy is concerned in the country. Here I'm trying to just provide you with the energy and water balance, just to show how much water resources, how much energy resources the country has. So in South Africa, currently, we have got 46,000 megawatts of installed electricity capacity. But the problem is now we only have access to 40% of that installed energy because of the issues that I've indicated earlier on, which are resulting into these unplanned outages and also maintenance issues. And recently, I think last month, the situation got so worse that we lost 18 megawatts of power, and that resulted in the electricity being switched off or maybe implementing a stage 6. Which is really bad for the country and the economy in general. And insofar as water is concerned, we know South Africa does not receive enough rainfall compared to the world average. So that is given, that is known. My screen just disappeared there. Yes, so that is another issue that we have got. And if you look at percentages, you can tell that the 65% of the country receives less than 500 millimeters of rain, and that is a concern, and 21%. So you can tell that obviously we are a water scarce country. But compounding the issues or affecting our water resources is the issue of non-revenue water. That is the water that is treated and distributed, but there is no payment for it, or majority of it is lost through leakages and so on. So that is also affecting the water availability in the country, and we are losing almost 9.9 billion. This is, I think, an old estimation. We might be around maybe 10 or 11 billion per year. So that is the issue that we are facing currently insofar as water is concerned. I have extrapolated this table from the Integrated Resource Plan 2019. This plan really shows the water security in the country. It shows how much energy we have. It shows how much energy we will need, and how much energy, how we are going to get that energy going forward. And as you can see, currently the base load is provided by coal and nuclear. And as we go on, by 2030, you will see that we are intending to reduce energy supply from coal, and that will be around 43%. And that will be contributing almost 60%. But currently, compared to what energy coal is contributing to the energy, it's around 80%. So you can see this massive decline in terms of coal, and that is in line with our climate change commitments. But what I want to show you on this slide is the issue around hydropower. Currently, we have got 2,100 megawatts installed, and the plan is by 2030 we should be adding around 2,500 megawatt, and that will bring us to 4,600. So what my argument is here is that there is more that we can do. There is more that we can contribute through hydropower, as you will see when I proceed with the presentation. Yes, and on this slide, I'm trying to show the importance or the contribution that hydropower is currently providing to the energy space in South Africa. These are peaking power stations from Eskom. And so I want you to focus on the blue part, which is the tree-pumped storage as well as hydroelectric. Currently they are providing in excess of, I think, more than 3,000 megawatt. So that they are usually used when the demand is too high. That's when we tap into the peaking. That's why they call the peaking power plants, because they contribute to mitigate against high demand times. Usually, then those are very, very important power stations that keep the base load going. So that is very important, and you can see on the map where they are located. So they are located in strategic areas with high waters and so on and so forth. So that is insofar as any hydropower is concerned. So I'm building a case here just to show you how important hydropower is and how it works. And here I've got two slides here. The top one, it shows you the pumped storage power system that is in Drakensberg. It's one of the stations, and at the bottom there is Harip and the Van der Kloof power stations. These are, we call run-of-river hydropower stations. So in other words, you release water at a very high speed under pressure to power the turbines, power turbines. As they spin, they generate electricity, and then it is now distributed to the grid. And on the Drakensberg one, the blue lines or blue arrows, you can see that the water is powered from the top, and then it generates electricity and then to the national grid. From the national grid, then it can be distributed. But this is only during peak times. So when there is no, the demand is low, then we pump the water back to the dam that is built upstream. So I encourage each and every one of you, if sometime you find yourself in the Drakensberg, go there and view and see those majestic dams, and you will see human ingenuity there with regard to engineering, and you will see marvelous things at these power stations. So they are very welcoming to visitors. So that is really to show you how these systems works. And insofar as water is concerned, this is an extract from the Water and Sanitation Master Plan, which shows that by 2030, if things goes as they are, we will have a 10% deficit in the water supply. But then they propose that if we reduce losses, water losses in the country, particularly from urban, that is to do with domestic and so on, we will have a deficit of 5%. But then if we reduce domestic demand from 237 liters per person per day to 175. So that is an average of water that a person uses in South Africa currently. We are using 237 per person per day. And that is too much compared to the world standards, which is around 100 and something. So if we reduce that to 175, then we will have a surplus of 3%. So you can see that there are issues with regard to water demand and conservation management. So those are some of the things that perhaps we need to focus on, and that is what the National Master Plan is advocating. Right, now let us get into the real meat, the crux of the presentation today. Here I'm trying to explain and to show why we think the Lesotho mountains hold the solution to our water and energy crisis. The Lesotho mountains are at an altitude of more than 3,000 meters. So that is more than 3 kilometers. And the average place there, the highest place in average is around 1.4. And if you look in South Africa, we are below that 1,400. So it makes sense that everything that flows from this mountain will flow towards us, and we need to take advantage of that. That is already, there's a case in place with the Lesotho Islands Water Project. As you can see, the faces there, but those are not the point of discussions today. What I need to demonstrate here is that you can see that this area, because of the altitude, then there is this potential that you can use gravity to generate energy, as well as to propel water downstream to many areas, and then to to generate a lot of energy and water resources. The other issue that I think is peculiar to these mountains is that their climate it's much more of that of temperate with alpine features. So if you can see, there is some sort of glacial type of environment there. So you can tell that there's lots of water in these mountains. So that is the basis within which we make this argument that there is a lot of possibilities in these mountains. And of course, the amount of rain that it receives, it's in excess of 2,000 millimeters. And that is, of course, influenced by the relief of these mountains. If I may proceed from here. So here I'm just showing you the rainfall patterns in South Africa. And you can see Lesotho, obviously, it shows that the minimum there is around 700 all the way to more than 1,500 millimeters. So that is a lot of water. But the other thing that is worth noting is that Lesotho currently is only using 2% of its available water resources. And obviously more than 90%, it means it's up for grabs, it's up for exploitation. So that is another a scientific basis for the argument that we're making today to say perhaps all is not lost. Let's look at the mountains of Lesotho. So in other words, this for me, they look like it's a water, it's a big giant water and energy tower that we should all look at to solve our water and energy issues. This slide, just to show currently how much water we are receiving from Lesotho. We have got what we call Katsi Dam and Moali Dam there, you can see with the red circle. And this is the numbers from the Lesotho Islands Development Authority. In 2015, that is the amount of water that they've transferred, that is million cubic meters to South Africa. And that is the amount of royalties that we are paying towards the Lesotho, towards the water. You can see it's around R1 billion. That is in Maluti currency. So that is the amount that we are paying for and what we are saying is that there is a possibility, there is an opportunity to increase these amounts to this amount of water, so that then we can alleviate water issues in South Africa. Just to explain the mechanisms or the mechanics around water transfer from Lesotho, you can see the water from the mountains, then it's collected here.
Yes, move closer to conclusion.
Thank you. Yes, the water then is transferred through a tunnel, then it generates power here, and then it goes all the way to the Valden. Let us move on. Okay, then insofar as energy is concerned, currently the Lesotho is generating hydropower from Moela Power Station, which is just below those dams which I've indicated there. And then there I'm showing you the thinking and also the mechanisms. You can see here the powerhouse. You can see here the tail dam. Then it's transferring the water to South Africa through the tunnel. But currently you can see the amount of energy that is generated there. It's gigawatt per hours that is generated in the mountains. Here is the majestic Katsi Dam, and behind it you can see the mountains, undulating landscape that I think is up for exploitation. And it's a marvelous work of engineering that I think we should exploit further. Just to conclude, Program Director, for me, geographically, I think Lesotho mountains hold the potential to solve our water and energy crisis. Currently, we are receiving around 40% that is being used in Gauteng. And the good thing about hydropower is that it's like a big battery that you can keep your energy in there. When you need it, you just release. And the good thing is that the water that is generated from afterwards, it's still of the same quality that it went into the turbines, and it will come out in the same state. So that is very, very important. The other thing that I think we should also look at is that we need to connect the Lesotho hydropower to Southern African power pool. And the issues of climate change, of course, many of you might be asking yourselves to say, but there is a challenge here. Recently, Lesotho has not been receiving enough rainfall and so on and so further. But the climate change really poses serious threat to this endeavor. So, but then obviously in terms of planning for expansion and so on, it needs to be integrated in that process. And the issues of environmental and social rights, they need to be also included in planning of this work. And within the SADC space, we need also to address the issues of economic integration, and also consider the riparian states, that is the states like Namibia, Botswana, and so on, which are also dependent on the Orange River basin. So we need to get their consent and also to make sure that everyone is on board when we develop this water resource. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with a question from the Marxist theorist Valdemir Lenin, who asks what is to be done now that we know all these things. And with that, I think my two colleagues are going to do justice to the question and explain exactly, because you know Parliament is not involved in the actual implementation of projects and so on. Our job is a bit different. We need to do the oversight and all of that. So, but I will leave that to the capable two colleagues who are going to explore and indicate how can we harness this possibility, this potential of Lesotho Islands Mountain. Program Director, I thank you so much for your indulgence. You may take the mic and proceed with your event.
Thank you, Tumani, for the insightful presentation. I will now hand over to Chini in a form of a question as to what oversight, legislative and international commitment options does Parliament have at its disposal to look into mitigating or improving the current water situation that we have? Jenny.
Thank you very much, Joseph and Tumani. Let me get this slideshow going. Here we go. So as Tumani mentioned, South Africa is a water scarce country with unequal distribution of rainfall. According to the 2021 Stats SA General Household Survey, about 88.7% of South African households had access to piped water. If one looks at the blue and green drop reports published in April this year, they indicated that the majority of water supply systems present a potential health risk to consumers. While 48% of water supply systems are in the low risk category, according to the blue drop report, about 34% of systems reside in the high risk and critical risk categories. Similarly, the green drop report states that 39% of municipal wastewater systems were in a critical state in 2021. There also appears to be a direct correlation between the better performance in the urban municipalities and the availability of specialist engineering and scientific skills being more prevalent in these municipalities. Poor municipal performance, poor management, and poor maintenance are at the heart of many water service delivery challenges. Since most municipalities are either water service authorities, water service providers, or sometimes both, they are responsible for the provision of water services and the maintenance of infrastructure. Many municipalities, however, have outdated water service development plans, and a worrying trend is that municipalities tend to conduct maintenance on a reactive basis rather than a preventative basis, and often only after infrastructure failures have occurred already. Due to the administrative and systems failures, as well as control deficiencies, some municipalities also fail to bill a large number of consumers for water services, leading to a significant financial loss and increased debt owed to water boards. Overall, a lack of technical capacity at the local level has also been evident in water crisis management. A prime example would be the involvement of the military in the Vaal River Intervention Project to repair faulty treatment works on block sewer lines, perform engineering services, and reinforce security walls to prevent vandalism. These are all maintenance and repair functions that are supposed to be carried out by municipalities and for which funds have already been allocated. In recent years, many municipalities have also started to rely more on administrators and finance managers than engineers for water and wastewater maintenance, mostly for cost-saving measures. There is a need for involving more qualified water engineers at the local level during both planning and maintenance processes. Parliament fulfills a number of roles, of which oversight is a very important function when it comes to addressing the current water crisis. Since one of the critical failures of water services provision is at the local level of government, there is a need for greater and more involved oversight in municipalities. This includes oversight over municipal grant spending, overall financial performance, and consequence management in particular. Internal control deficiencies and a failure to submit financial statements in a timely manner are, for example, frequent audit findings against municipalities, which make tracking performance very challenging. Oversight over large water infrastructure projects to track progress and spending is important, as these large projects are often subjected to delays, escalating costs, substandard contractors, and corruption. And as Tamani also mentioned, an example of this is the Giyani bulk water project in Limpopo, which has been known for the corruption allegations and delays, costs that are just escalating. And the project was supposed to be completed in 2017 already, and it's still not completed, leaving over 50 communities without access to safe drinking water. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts and the Select and Portfolio Committees responsible for water and sanitation were also kept abreast of investigations by the Special Investigations Unit on corruption at Lepel Northern Water Board in relation to the irregular contracts awarded as part of the Giyani project as well. Due to full committee schedules and the wide array of matters requiring attention, oversight often tends to be reactive rather than proactive as well. Instead of only focusing on projects and areas that are in a state of crisis, it would be ideal to also have more of a proactive approach to oversight to prevent challenges from escalating. Oversight also takes place through site visits, which include engaging with community stakeholders and government stakeholders to discuss challenges and facilitate dialogues. In terms of legislation, despite South Africa's annual rainfall being far below the global average, as Tamani also mentioned, South African households spend on average 30% more water than the global average. This signals the need for a wide-scale adoption of water-saving habits and technologies, including water recycling and reuse on a grand scale. In general, South Africa's water legislation is considered as strong, but as with many legislative frameworks in South Africa, the challenge lies in its application. There's an overall need for better governance, management, monitoring, enforcement, and consequence management in the sector. There's also a need for improved transparency. One way in which this can be achieved is through improved and wide-scale baseline monitoring, frequent data capturing and reporting, and publishing the results on a public platform. There is also an opportunity for using smart technologies to be installed in strategic places to report water flow, quality, temperature, and other variables to automate some of the data capturing processes. Some projects have already been rolled out in the metropolitan areas. Water baseline monitoring of groundwater has specifically been included in the recently published draft regulations for onshore oil and gas exploration and production, which is a great first step in streamlining baseline and continuous groundwater monitoring in industrial and mining activities as well. South Africa shares major rivers with 6 neighboring countries. It is therefore in all parties' best interest that these shared watercourses are protected, managed, and used sustainably and equitably. South Africa has also entered into international agreements on the management of these shared water sources. South Africa has further made international commitments in relation to water management and providing access to safe drinking water and sanitation, including the Sustainable Development Goals. International agreements are binding once they have been approved through a resolution by both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. The exception is if these agreements are of a technical, administrative, or executive nature, or an agreement which does not require ratification. At the moment, many select committees have several sectors to oversee, which is not always optimal for oversight. For example, the Select Committee on Cooperative Governance, Traditional Affairs and Human Settlements, Water and Sanitation deals mostly with municipalities placed under administration, and its work is dictated by legislative timeframes. This makes oversight over the water and sanitation sector very difficult due to time constraints and priority being given to local governance matters. There is therefore a potential for an ad hoc parliamentary committee to be established to focus on the water crisis specifically. There is a need for greater cooperation between different departments and spheres of government on the water crisis, for example, involving SALGA, Department of Cooperative Governance, Traditional Affairs, the Department of Water and Sanitation, and the Office of the Auditor General. There is an opportunity for greater engagement between a wider range of government and other stakeholders, including professional bodies, the NGO sector, think tanks, and academics. Parliament is in a position to facilitate such engagements and could potentially host a workshop. This could also pave the way for greater public-private partnerships in the water sector. There is a need and opportunity for strengthening capacity for compliance monitoring, enforcement, and technical functions. Parliamentary committees play a pivotal role in holding the executive to account on these matters and ensuring that they fulfill their mandates. There is an opportunity for more structured follow-up engagement with stakeholders on challenges related to water services during site visits conducted as part of parliamentary projects, in specific, talking about taking Parliament to the People and Provincial Week, to ensure the continuity of work and progressive improvements of the realities on the ground. Since water is a basic human right and a constitutional right, with the state acting as a custodian of water resources, it is therefore responsible for managing and allocating this resource in a sustainable, responsible, and fair manner. There is a need and responsibility for greater oversight, consequence management, and the eradication of corruption in the sector, creating greater capacity for monitoring and enforcement to ensure the protection of water resources, adequate management, and improved access to safe drinking water. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Janine. Let me go straight to Gabriel, focusing on the just the core issues on the energy sector, on what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. I've written some notes, and I noticed that Tomani has highlighted in his presentation some of the causes of the energy crisis, and these have led to a significant bottleneck in the energy supply, and this is translated into challenges in our economy. An indicator of this, Tomani, is the exchange rates. We've noticed that whenever we have load shedding as an indicator of the energy crisis, the rand to dollar exchange rates are affected. And also there's been a series of ratings downgrading by rating agencies, downgrading not only Eskom, but our economy in its entirety. And that shows that those are some of the indicators that indicates that this energy crisis is actually hindering our economy. And that's requiring more robust and immediate action. There is a very strong interaction between energy and water. And hence, I agree with you that a wave nexus approach is required. Just to quickly highlight those interactions, as you know, as you indicated in your presentation, the LESOTHO Highlands project, that you've got the hydropower generation. So water can be used to generate electricity, and water is used in our Quebec station for cooling our turbines and also in other power plants, and also for cleaning our water, our energy power plants. And the same way, as Jenny indicated, the role of municipalities. energy is used by municipalities to pump water to the different areas where water is required, and also in their purification system. And also, moreover, bringing in the food angle, water is critical towards the cultivation, both water and energy. It's critical towards the cultivation of crops that are used for biofuel as another source of energy. So for just transition to be realized, reforms are required or needed across these sectors, taking into account their relationships, meaning one should not be over the other. With regards to the Lesotho Highlands, the planned expansion of the Lesotho Highlands will have a significant or will translate into increase in power generation. And thus, hopefully, should that be envisaged in the future, will contribute towards the proposed energy mixes. Okay, I thought I should highlight some of the relating to the president's speech. Colleagues, if you noticed that the president's speech dealt directly with some of the root causes of our energy crisis, for instance, poor energy infrastructure, an increased population, the scrapping of requirements for private entities for providing energy, which is crucial. Which is crucial to ensuring that we are energy sufficient, but also Parliament needs to play a critical role based on recent observations when dealing with the COVID pandemic, that Parliament needs to have a more stricter and a more vigilant oversight with regards to how processes are implemented, how things are procured. It becomes very crucial. While in the same breath, it's very important that Parliament also ensures that our power entity does not get out-competed by the private sector, but forms part of a complementary role in their intervention of the power crisis. The procurement of PPEs, there's been concern in the news that the appointment of the previous PPEs did not follow, was not just. A lot of local public-private power producers were not selected. So Parliament needs to play a critical role in ensuring that this procurement process of energy is fair and equitable. Moreover, it's very critical for Parliament to ensure that the procurement of and the agreement signed between South Africa and Botswana and Zambia in procuring the energy ensures that the energy that is procured does not lead us into economic deficit. Thus ensuring that we have the energy does not lead to increase in electricity costs, because this translates into stagnant economy where you find industries are struggling to operate under high energy prices. The locally manufactured green economy projects are a step in a good direction, ensuring that local entities are mainstreamed within the economy and within the energy production process. Another challenge that contributed to our crisis is the lack of storage, which the president indicated that they'll be releasing proposals in September to increase the battery storage, thus ensuring that we have enough power when it's needed, especially during high demands. And this needs to ensure that local entities are considered, or local industries are considered within that process, and also that the legislation, the special legislation that the president has indicated to be tabled in front of Parliament, addressing the legal and regulatory obstructions to the energy, not only addresses the energy crisis, but also ensures that it falls in within the Constitution and all other acts in the country. The increase in Eskom's critical maintenance budget is crucial, and this makes it very crucial for Parliament to ensure that these funds are implemented where they're needed and in a more impact-based approach, ensuring that we don't lose out of that money due to corruption and other illegal acts. The president also indicated that households and businesses will be encouraged to install rooftop solar panels, and these can be, the excess energy can be sold to Eskom. The same should be ensured that this is conducted in an equitable manner. It's important to also indicate that the Speaker of Parliament did raise this with the head of business government or the deputy president of the country, that Parliament should be kept abreast of all interventions with regards to the energy crisis. This does not stop Parliament from also taking a proactive approach to this to ensure that all processes and legal frameworks are followed. And how can this be done? My proposal is that currently there are mechanisms that Parliament is using, and those should definitely continue. But as the executive has established a joint interdepartmental approach or a sectoral approach to addressing the energy crisis, Parliament should also take that approach by establishing a joint committee that involves different committees to address the energy crisis. What comes to mind is your Department of Water Affairs, your water and sanitation portfolio, your portfolio looking at finances, because those are very crucial, and the portfolio committee looking at the Auditor General to ensure that there is compliance across this sectorial approach taken by government, so that we don't find ourselves wanting or having to play catch up at the end. An additional approaches that I could think of is impact-based approach to the Parliament's oversight, where the value for money is used and is equated to the project or services provided. Colleagues, this is a good step towards a just transition where the costs and benefits for climate action are realized from the different energy mixes that have been proposed to be included to addressing this energy crisis. Parliament needs to develop indicators, and these indicators will help them in tracking in the oversight role and helping identify potential risks and vulnerabilities that might arise, and this could be addressed with the executive. And the last one is implementation of stricter consequence management and tracking systems of the resolutions passed by the various committees. Furthermore, Parliament needs to ensure over and above its oversight, as Jenny has indicated, that we need to ensure that we always adhere or meet our international agreements in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and air quality in all these interventions, ensuring that the executive or government meets its international agreements so that these don't have repercussions for our economy or repercussions for the country in future. There is a need for increased capacity for committees to conduct oversight while keeping track of the fast-paced changes. And this could be done by increasing the special representation or special oversight. Our colleagues, the president indicated that private sector will be joining or will be contributing towards the energy production and the PPE and the PPPs as well. Thus requiring Parliament to come up with a more joint operation in terms of oversight utilizing its provincial legislations or working together with them to conduct joint oversight and monitoring to ensure that the 10 points that the president highlighted to addressing the energy prices are achieved. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Unfortunately, thank you, Gabriel, for the input. It's clear that Parliament has its work cut out, and it's clear what needs to be done. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. Actually, we've run beyond time. And apologies for that. And I would have liked to take a few questions, but due to the time that we have, it's no longer possible. But we're going to have the presentations uploaded on Parliament's website. You can follow them there, as well as on Parliament's YouTube channel. This webinar will be uploaded there. Let me take this opportunity to thank everyone who came and for your attendance. It's highly appreciated. And if I can recall from what was said, that Parliament needs to be proactive, needs to develop tools for tracking implementation and ensure that there's implementation and value for money. Thank you very much. The webinar is adjourned.